Welcome to the Three Rivers podcast for Wednesday, April 3rd. I'm your host, Ed Troop. Glad you could join us today on Oneburg Facebook Live and live on the Oneburg YouTube channel. On today's show, we're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff, including the undefeated and red-hot Pittsburgh Pirates. That's right, unbeaten, 5-0 on the season. They look to stay unbeaten tonight in the nation's capital as they visit the Washington Nationals for Game 2 of a 3-game set. Also, we're going to continue to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers 2024 offseason, as we're now just 3 weeks away from the NFL draft. And the NCAA men's and women's basketball Final Four set, with Caitlin Clark leading the women's side with the Iowa Hawkeyes, as they are the number 1 seed going into their Final Four. They will play in this upcoming weekend's Final Four in Cleveland on the women's side. Joining them is the other number 1 undefeated team, the South Carolina Gamecocks, the number 3 seeded NC State, and the number 3 seeded UConn Huskies. And speaking of the Huskies on the men's side, they are also the number 1 seed. They will be in the Final Four this weekend as well, as they play the 4 seeded Alabama Crimson Tide, and number 1 Purdue will play the 11th seeded NC State this upcoming Saturday night. Joining me to discuss all this and more is Del Lolley from Steelers.com and the Steelers Radio Network. Thanks for joining me, Del, here this morning. Good to have you on the show.
Nice to be here, Ed. How you doing?
Very good, very good. Well, Del, we talked about it right at the beginning. The Pittsburgh Pirates are the hot topic here in Pittsburgh. Normally this time of the year, right? Beginning of the baseball season, everybody's amped up about the Pirates. Of course, that fades as we get into June and July, get closer to the Steelers training camp. But right now, the Pirates have our attention, and rightfully so. They are 5-0, undefeated on the season. They look to stay unbeaten tonight at Washington. How surprised are you about this start from the Pirates?
You know, I knew they would be pretty good offensively this year. I thought they'd be a lot better. I've been kind of surprised by how well they've pitched in the first few games here. Gotten some good starts here, other than maybe the Bailey Falter start that over the weekend. But hey, they got off to a 20-8 start last year as well, and then kind of faltered after that. But winning 5 games in a row on the road, I don't care who you've played. That's significant in Major League Baseball, and we'll see if they can keep that going.
Yeah, you mentioned some of the pitching. Rookie Jared Jones kind of leading the way on the pitching side so far for the Pirates here in the 2024 season. Jones, a pretty good first start, 10 strikeouts, 4.76 ERA. He's also being joined by Marco Gonzalez. There's another name you probably weren't expecting to hear this year from Seattle in his 5th year. Gonzalez also having a good year, 1.80 ERA in his first start, as he got 2 strikeouts and a win here in these first couple games. And of course, Mitch Keller also, of course, being the ace of this staff so far in the season. Banged up a little bit, got a no decision in his first start. He will pitch tonight in Washington. But Del, I think the other surprising thing is the bullpen and how well the bullpen has responded so far. 4 different pitchers with saves so far, and none of them are named Bednar. How about that?
Yeah, and they've always done, even when they were bad, they've done a good job over the years of building that bullpen depth. And if you're not going to have top level, top notch starting pitching, that's critical in Major League Baseball. That you have guys who can get you 4 or 5 innings out of that bullpen every time. If you have to string that over 3 guys or however you want to do it, because let's face it, in today's game, there's just there aren't the horses that you used to have. A 6-inning start out of a starting pitcher now is considered a solid outing. And so the bullpen is going to have to be there, and you have to have guys that are able to do different things out of the bullpen, give teams different looks. And it looks like the Pirates have gotten that.
Yeah, so far so good on the season, the bullpen being the strength of what they've been able to do to get off to this awesome 5-0 start that they have. On the other side, on the offensive side of what the Buccos have been able to do so far this season, not too many big surprises. Brian Reynolds so far batting .333 through these first 5 games. 8 RBIs. He's been pretty much the horse behind what they've been able to do. Key Brian Hayes, solid as well, batting .391 with 5 RBIs. Connor Joe, .348, 5 RBIs on the season. O'Neill Cruz bouncing back from that awful injury from a year ago, batting .316. But here's a name for you, Michael Taylor. in his sixth season. They get him from the Twins, the center fielder for the Pirates so far this year, batting .471, 4 RBIs on the season as well. He has been a superstar so far here early in the season for the Pirates.
Yeah, and that was a big pickup that they made. They got him, midway through their spring training. He gives them another legitimate Major League Baseball bat in their lineup, and he's got speed, he's got some power. Had 20+ home runs last year for the Twins. But the thing that I liked the other day, he comes out in the leadoff spot late in the game in a tie game against, I believe it was one of the Washington games, or the first Washington game, and lays down a bunt and gets on with the bunt. I don't think enough teams do that. I think the bunt is a weapon because everybody's playing for the home run. And I know that Twins team that he was on last year, my friend Mike Pursuta is a very big Twins fan, and he would talk about that all the time. That team struck out a gajillion times last year. They led the Major League Baseball in strikeouts, but they also hit a bunch of home runs. I don't know if that's the way you want to play with Taylor. I think you want to have him bunt and try to do those things. The key thing here is, Ed, that those guys aren't going to continue to hit at that pace. At some point you're going to have to play maybe a little bit more small ball and things of that nature. And we saw Derek Shelton do that in the extra innings the other day, where they come out, they get the bunt base hit, they bunt the runner over, and it turns into a big inning. I just think that you can do those things in today's game, because I don't know that fundamentally a lot of these kids have grown up learning how to bunt. I coach an 18U travel team that would go play college showcases, and I can remember the first year that we did it. This is probably 4 years ago now, and I asked, okay, how many of you guys have actually bunted and some, they raised their hands. How many know how to bunt? They all raised their hands. I said, how many of you have bunted in a game? And like 2 guys raised their hands. I'm like, it's just a lost art. And I think if you can do that, because teams don't prepare for it as much, because they don't see it, and it can be a weapon, especially when you've got some speed. Like the Pirates have a good, they don't have any blazers out there, but they've got good team speed, and I think they can use that as a weapon.
Absolutely. You're watching the Three Rivers podcast. I'm your host, Ed Troop. That's Dale Lolley on your right or left, depending on how you're looking on your device. Dale from Steelers.com and Steelers Radio Network. We're going to get to the Steelers in here a little bit to talk about their offseason, but we're talking Bucco baseball right now, and the Pirates red hot 5-0 start. They play today at 4:05 against the Washington Nationals, who are 1-3 on the year. As I said, Mitch Keller gets his second start of the season. Dale, a year ago, the Pirates got off to a great start as well. If you remember, through the month of April and May, they were turning a lot of heads around here. I think they were something like 15, 16 games over 500 early in the season. And then the basement floor gave out, right? They fell quickly and hard. I think in the month of June, only a handful of wins. And by the All-Star break, they were pretty much back to the conversation in Pittsburgh of us talking about the Steelers training camp. Do you think, and again, we're only 5 games in, do you think the Pirates can sustain this type of streak? We know they're not going to go undefeated, but can they keep our interest, come August and September?
I think they're better suited right now to be able to do that. They have some young arms in the minors, including Paul Skeens, who will be up at some point here. So, if they can maintain, at least keep around 500 here in the early part of the season, which obviously they're over that right now. So if they can stay around that figure to the mid-season point, there's no reason why, when they start bringing up some of these young arms that they can't make a push in the second half. We'll see. I mean, I don't believe that the NL Central is a super strong division. I mean, I think, you might be able to steal the division title with 85, 86 wins. So if you can hang around 500 here until you get guys like Skeens up in the majors, why not?
Talk about Paul Skeens, got his first start last week in AAA Indianapolis, and the stats were exactly what we thought, right? I think average pitch was over 100 miles per hour. No one touched him, came in very strong. I mean, this guy's ready to go. We know why he was held back from a contract and financial reason for the Pirates, but we should see him come June, at least we're hoping. Talk about Paul Skeens and your expectations for him this year.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we've all seen the big arm, that he can blow up by people even at the major league level. But I think the other thing that you see is, he just has that mentality, and that's tough to come by. I think the other stuff is really good as well. His off speed thing stuff, and so right now it's just a matter of getting the guy ready to pitch on a regular basis. At the major league level, and I had the opportunity in college. My son played at Waynesburg with Mason Miller, who's now with the Oakland A's, and that was one of the things that the A's went through with Miller. Again, a guy that throws over 100. It was regularly. I think his first spring training outing this year, he was 9 out of his 17 pitches were 100 miles or more. Um, but getting those college players to build up that arm strength and being able to take the ball every 5 days, after pitching basically just once every week. Maybe you're the Friday pitcher in college, so you pitch every Friday in college, and that's all you do. It's a little bit different mentality in Major League Baseball, being able to take the ball and go out there and go deep into games and throw 180 innings when you've never done that before. So I expect Skeens, to continue to dominate at the AAA level, and when he comes up to Major League to the majors, this guy looks like a 20-game winner. He looks like a guy that's going to go out there and be your staff ace. You mentioned that Keller is that ace right now. I think when Paul Skeens comes up, Keller becomes your number two. I think this kid has that kind of talent.
Yeah, absolutely. Big expectations for Paul Skeens when he does eventually get to the major league club hopefully early this summer in June for the Pirates. And I think that's why, if you take a look at this staff and the bullpen, the whole pitching overall in this team, if they can sustain that and get to when Skeens comes up here, they're just going to be that much better. It's going to make them that much more dangerous as a baseball team. But again, early in the season, we've been here before as Pirates fans following the Pirates over the years, 5-0. Last week, we were on the eve of the start of the Major League Baseball season, and we talked about expectations for the Pirates this year. I was one to say that I think a good season for them is an 80-win season, and to keep our interest in them until late August, early September, as far as being in the wild card conversation. Dale, what is your expectations or predictions?
I mean, the over under for them in Vegas was 75.5. I definitely think they go over that. Again, I think the offense is legit. I don't know if they have any real holes in their lineup right now in terms of major league batters. I think they have legitimate major league hitters at every spot in the order and every spot in the lineup. The key is going to be, can they avoid some of the injuries? You mentioned the Cruz injury earlier. I think that was a huge one for the Pirates last year. The one thing that when you're a smaller market team, you can't afford to have those kind of things, especially to one of your key players. They need to keep guys like Hayes and Brian Reynolds and Cruz healthy and out on the field, because you just don't have replacement players sitting around waiting for these guys to come in and play if something happens to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Health, a big part in every sport. But we saw that last year when Cruz went down. They seemed to struggle after that. The Pirates will look to stay unbeaten tonight, as we said, in our nation's capital at the Nationals tonight at, what we say earlier, this evening, I
think it's a 4:00 start.
4 o'clock game. So that'll be coming up here relatively soon. And the Pirates will look to continue this streak. Who knows where it will take them, but they're keeping our interest level right there for now. Now let's turn our attentions to the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's your bread and butter, mine as well. And talk a little bit about this offseason so far and what the Steelers have been able to address in the first wave of free agency. Of course, the quarterback position is the most obvious as being the biggest attention getter. Out, of course, is Trubinsky, Mason Rudolph, and Kenny Pickett traded to the Eagles. In is Russell Wilson and, of course, Justin Fields so far. And don't forget about Kyle Allen, right? He's the other big free agent signing that they had at the quarterback position. But your thoughts, we'll start with the quarterback position, what they've done so far.
Yeah, I think when they went into this offseason, they started looking at this and going, okay, how can we take what is a good roster and make it better? And, they were very interested in Russell Wilson. The Justin Fields thing kind of came together after that when, everything that I've heard and from people that I've talked to, in the front office that, it just became a matter of, Kenny Pickett not reacting as well to the news that they were signing Russell Wilson and the fact that he was going to be the number one, as Mike Tomlin said multiple times last week in Orlando. Russell Wilson was going to be in pole position, and that was going to be whether it was Kenny Pickett as behind him, or as it turned out to be Justin Fields. When Pickett had the reaction that he had to the Wilson signing and asked to be traded, they said, okay, if that's what you want, we think we can get Justin Fields as well. And they were able to do that, and then ship Pickett to the Eagles. This is a situation where, I think there's a defined pecking order here. Wilson's the 1, Fields is the 2, and then Allen is the 3. And, it allows the Steelers, and they've done a great job of this over the years. It's what they did with Kevin Colbert when Kevin Colbert, ran the organization or the draft side of things. And it's also what Omar Khan has done as well now is, every year they like to be able to, if they had to line up and play a game on the eve of the draft, they would have legitimate NFL players at all 22 positions. And they've done that. But then you look at it and you say, okay, you've addressed the quarterback position. You went out and got Patrick Queen at linebacker. You've done some other things. You got Dante Jackson, who's an outside cornerback. So you've replaced that. The safety, Deshaun Elliott is another guy that can step in and take over that strong safety position. But the areas of need right now that still are there are at center. Right now it's Nick Herbig as the starting center, and I don't know that that's the what you want to go with, where you want to go with that. I think he's better suited to be a guard. Really hasn't played center much in the NFL other than doing it in practice. They still need a slot cornerback, and to me, I still think they're a wide receiver short of where they want to be, whether that be an outside guy or whether that be an inside guy. With some of the signings that they made of, Van Jefferson and Quez Watkins and guys like that. So they've got legitimate NFL guys at some of those spots, but you can always overdraft that or outdraft that. And I think that's what you go into the draft looking to do here: acquire a center, get a slot cornerback, and then also address that wide receiver position, while also addressing the tackle position. I think they look at that the same way. They'd like to get Broderick Moore over to left tackle. This is a great draft for tackles this year. We could see 8 offensive tackles taken in the first round. So essentially a quarter of the first round could be offensive tackles. And I was just doing some research on that last night. In the drafts from 2018 to 2022, there were 20 offensive tackles taken in the first round. You're going to see 8 this year. I'm going to go out on a limb and say you are going to see 8 offensive tackles taken in the first round of this draft. And I think they can get a right tackle and then also address those other positions.
You mentioned the offensive lineman being taken in the first round, not too appealing for the ESPN folks or NFL Network who are looking for those big quarterback, running back superstars and get the big lineman up there. But being an ex-offensive lineman that I am, I'll appreciate that come this draft. And I agree. I've been saying it all along the last couple months that the Steelers' biggest need, maybe getting another tackle to play opposite side of Jones, and you shore up those 2 spots, and man, you can really get things going from a protection standpoint in the passing game and, of course, on the running game as well. And, of course, now Mason Cole gone at the center position, as you mentioned, as well, also opens up another opportunity in the draft or free agency. The other big free agency pickup, Dell, of course, was Patrick Queen from the Ravens, addressing that inside linebacker position, something that the Steelers have struggled to really get somebody in here since the injury of Ryan Shazier. They've had a lot more misses than hits at that position. Of course, injuries plagued them last year at the inside linebacker position. But your thoughts on Patrick Queen coming from the Baltimore Ravens to be the anchor in that inside linebacker group?
Yeah, when free agency in the run up to free agency, I didn't think that the Steelers would be able to afford a guy like Queen. I thought that he would really kind of break the market here, and that didn't turn out to be the case. I think they got him at a relatively reasonable price, for when you look at what some of the other guys have signed for in recent years. So that just made a lot of sense, and I think for Queen, You know, he looked at it as an opportunity to stay in the AFC North where, he was accustomed to playing. You don't have to those opponents, your main opponents over the course of the season. The AFC, maybe you weren't as interested in sliding over to an NFC team and starting over essentially from square one. So I think he is an every down linebacker. I think he is just starting to hit his stride. I know a lot of people said, well, he really took off when Roquan Smith came in and took over the play calling duties and all that stuff. If you look at it with young linebackers, it typically takes 3 or 4 years for those guys to kind of acclimate themselves to the NFL because so much of what they're asked to do in the NFL is, I mean, it's very much you have to be able to play the run, but you also have to be able to play the pass. And offensive coordinators now around the league are so good at manipulating young linebackers, getting them to take false steps and things of that nature. That it's really until you hit that 24, 25, 26, year age, that you don't really have that true understanding of what you need to do at that position. I know talking to Keith Butler, the old Steelers offensive or defensive coordinator, he used to say that was the sweet spot for linebackers. And if you look at it, that was really what happened with Ryan Shazier as well early in his career. His first couple of years were good. I mean, he made the splash plays, but it wasn't until year 3 and 4 where he really started to bring the whole game together. And so I think they're at that spot with Patrick Queen here, who's still just 24 years old, has already been in the league for 4 years, and so he's got now that the mental aspect of the game down a little bit more, but he still has the physical traits that should make him and should allow him to make a lot of plays for this team moving forward. So I love that signing. I think we'll see what happens with Cole Holcomb. Um, he's still in that recovery phase. That was a very serious leg injury that he had last year, a little bit more than just a broken leg. I thought he was really playing well for them. Started to kind of each game he got better and better and better. But then when they lost him, that was a serious blow. So if he's able to come back, they still have a Landon Roberts there as well, who was very solid last year. Played a lot more snaps than what they expected him to have to play. They expected to have that 3-man rotation. So if you get Holcomb back, you still have Roberts. You can go back to that 3-man rotation, or if Holcomb is fine, you can make this a situation where sometimes you might want to put all 3 of those guys on the field together. Sometimes you might not want to. Maybe you don't want to do the rotation against certain teams. Maybe against, let's say you're playing Cleveland and they want to run the ball a lot. Maybe you want to go with Landon Roberts out there beside Patrick Queen to give you a little bit more, run stopping ability. It gives them a lot of options, if they're able to get Cole Holcomb back healthy.
Yeah, they definitely have a lot more options at that inside linebacker position now with the signing of Queen. With, as you mentioned, with Holcomb, hopefully comes back. I thought Roberts did a fabulous job last year for the Steelers at the inside linebacker position as the season went on with injuries and everything else that happened to the Steelers defense up the middle. Dale, talk a little bit about the trade of Deontay Johnson. Of course, he goes to Carolina in exchange for a draft pick. And you mentioned before the defensive back, Dante Jackson, who now joins the black and gold. But, Deontay Johnson, boy, oh boy, we do a post-game show here on Oneberg after each Steeler game. And several times, especially towards the end of the season, him giving up on plays and just really became a big distraction to this team as the season went on. I mentioned it a couple times, especially towards the end of the season, that they were probably going to trade him, get him off this roster. But your thoughts on Deontay Johnson and ultimately what happened with him being traded?
I've always been a Deontay Johnson supporter because, the one thing that he does is that I think is very underrated in the NFL is that he is always open. And that's not easy to do in the NFL level. I think he's an extremely talented route runner. He's not the biggest guy, not the fastest guy, but he does get open on a consistent basis. And I think there were times last year that he just got missed. He would be running open and the quarterbacks wouldn't get him the football. Actually, it happened a lot the last 2 seasons. And to me, one of the things that happens with wide receivers is, if you run 25 routes in a row and you were open on, let's say, half of them, and all these guys think they're open all the time. I mean, that's just the
Right.
reality of it. They always think they're open and they should get the football. But if
Yep.
you're getting open and you're not getting the ball, I think your mind tends to wander a little bit. It's difficult for some guys to stay focused on a play in and play out basis. If you that's one of the reasons why Ben Roethlisberger always made sure, in the first quarter of the games, you'd look up after the first quarter and you go, man, he threw the ball to 6 different receivers in the first quarter, and that was by design. He wanted to make sure guys got the football to get them involved in the game plan early, so that they stayed mentally focused and did those things. So, I think that's a young quarterback issue that maybe you don't necessarily do that. And some of it may have been the offensive coordinator as well. Sometimes you have to dial some things up early in a game. Hey, we're gonna get George Pickens a ball here. Now we're gonna get one to Deontay. We'll make him the primary. Let's get Pat Freiermuth involved, just to get those guys touches early in the game and keep their minds focused. That being said, I understand where you're coming from with the Deontay not doing this or not doing that, and those things are unacceptable. I do think that he was accountable for those things. It was not who he wanted to be. I think he'll have a lot of success in Carolina, just because he does get open, and that's going to be he's going to be a huge crutch for Young down there, to lean on. It's something he just didn't have last year. The Steelers had the luxury of being able to make that trade. They had their eyes on Dante Jackson for several years. They liked him coming out of the draft out of LSU. They tried to get him in free agency a couple of years ago when his contract was up. He ended up staying in Carolina. Now they're able to get him, this time around, and also move up in this year's draft. And with that trade, you look at it as a straight swap of players, but they also moved up 60 spots in this draft. And in this particular draft, that's critical, because I think there's probably 150 guys or so in this draft that are really good prospects, but then it kind of tails off at the end of the draft, where you look at it and say, okay, I don't know that I like these guys quite as much as I like those first 150. So being able to do that, and you've seen that kind of trade made a lot around the league in this offseason, where teams would swap a player or trade a player, and some of the stuff involved was, hey, I'm gonna turn this 6th round pick into a 5th round pick, or I'm gonna turn this 5th round pick into a 4th round pick, because I think that has real value in this year's draft.
Yeah, definitely a deep draft for talent at multiple positions, as you mentioned earlier. So having extra draft picks or moving up, even if it is in the later rounds, as you said, Dell, very important, and will be helpful for the Steelers. Just 3 weeks away, draft 3 weeks from tomorrow. Hard to believe, but it is right around the corner. Hey, Dell, I want to get your thoughts too on Cordell Patterson, the big sign last week. The NFL, of course, changes the kickoff rule for the upcoming season, and Omar Khan makes a move immediately and brings in one of the best kick returners of all time. And when you think about the Steelers in the last 20 years, 2 names come to mind on kick returners that were really awesome: Antonio Brown early in his career, and of course Antoine Randall L was a very good kick returner. But the Steelers haven't had too many really good kick returners over the years. Here's a guy in Cordell Patterson that can make a big difference this season.
Yeah, they haven't had a guy lead the league in kick return average since Rod Woodson did it in '89. So it's
There's another one.
Been quite a while there. They've had some good punt returners. You mentioned Brown. Deontay Johnson led the league in punt return average and as a rookie. So they've had that aspect of it, but they haven't had a true kick returner. The league wants returns back in into the game. If you look at it last year, the Steelers returned 24 kicks, and their opponents returned 18. So essentially 1 per game out of the opponents. You're going to see that number increase this year. The thing that we don't know is how this new rule is going to affect the games. It's funny. I had a conversation just yesterday with Danny Smith about this, how this is going to work and how he's going to teach it, how they're going to implement it. And, he's funny. He said, I turned on one of the UFL games on Saturday to see this kick return rule, and they don't use it. They don't do it anymore. So the thing that they're copying from the XFL was an XFL rule, and the XFL then merged with the USFL. They decided they weren't going to use it anymore. Now the NFL is going to implement it. So, these guys, these players coming out of college haven't seen this. I doubt many of these guys were sitting around watching XFL games in the offseason. They didn't do it in college football. They haven't done it in high school. So, it's going to be different. And I wonder if we're going to see more big bodies out there on kickoffs. Maybe you have an athletic defensive lineman. If you remember early in Brett Kiesel's career, he played on special teams and did some kick stuff. Maybe you have some guys like that. Maybe this changes how you approach the back end of your roster. It certainly changed what the Steelers wanted to do at that kick return spot. They go out and say, hey, we're going to, if they're going to be more returns, let's go out and get one of the best guys that's ever done it, in Cordell Patterson. And he gives you that opportunity. If you remember with Cordell Patterson, there were times in his career, and there have been times in his career, the ball's kicked 8 or 9 yards deep into the end zone, and he's still bringing it out. Right. So he's been aggressive over the course of his career on those things because he's really good at it. And this is a guy that gets up to speed quickly. He could be a real weapon for the Steelers this year, and that kick return rule is going to be very fast. I can't wait to watch throughout OTAs and mini camp and training camp how much they work on this. To make sure that they get this right, because I don't think any of the teams in the league know how this is going to work.
Yeah, it's really a weird setup if you go out and watch any of the XFL highlights of basically the kick team is on the other side of the 50. They're at the 40 or 35 yard line. They're lining up basically 10 yards away from the return team, and they can't move until the ball is fielded, I believe, by the return man. And
that's going to be the key thing here, because the kickoff team can see the ball. Yeah, they can see when it's going to land. The kick coverage team, either they're going to have to be turned around watching the ball in the air, or they're going to have to just wait and focus on the guy catching the football or the ball hitting in the ground. They're going to get kind of a late start on that stuff, especially early. I would have somebody on the sideline that they can all see with like a flag or something. I don't know. I don't know what the rules are with those kind of things. But there's going to have to be something there, because I think you're going to see some exciting plays early in the season as teams figure this thing out.
Yeah, absolutely. Will definitely be interesting to see. Dell, we have a few more minutes left here with you here on the show. Want to get to a couple quick comments. Jason Mesher checks in. My good buddy Jason says, we've had our share of point, I think kick return villains, Cribbs, Metcalf over the years. Will be nice to have a stud of our own over the year. Boys, isn't that the truth? We talked about returners for the Steelers, lack of, but against our special teams, we've sure had a lot go the distance over the years. His other comment too, wanted to get your idea here. He says, I think the con artist will stay at 20 or try to move up or down in the first round. You talked a little bit about that just a little bit ago about the upcoming draft and their needs, but what is your call there as far as the NFL draft here in a few weeks? Will Omar Khan stay at 20, or will he move up or down?
Well, I think the only way you move up is if you see a run on those tackles, in that middle of the first round, and they see an opportunity there to go up at a minimal cost. I don't know that they want to necessarily give up a lot of picks. We saw them be, progressive with that last year and go get Broderick Jones and moving up a few spots. Trading down, to me, in this particular draft, if I can get another second day pick out of moving down 4 or 5 spots or however many it is, I'm in. I'll listen to all kinds of stuff, because I really think when I look at this draft, there are always tiers in drafts. I think this year there's probably, to me, 20, 22, 23 real first round draft picks. So if you can get one of those guys by moving down, but then get somebody who's in that next group of players, and I think this year there's maybe 70 players that are in that second group of that second tier. If I can get a couple of those guys as well, as the Steelers did last year, by getting both Broderick Jones and Joey Porter Jr. and Keanu Benton, if I can do that again, you can really remake your roster really, really quickly and get a lot younger and better.
Great stuff, Dell, on the upcoming Steeler draft from, again, just 3 weeks from tomorrow. The first round will be happening for the Black and Gold. You can catch Dell at Steelers.com. He's part of the Steelers Radio Network. And, Dell, you have the Steelers Nation Radio podcast, right? And you said it's one of the top 10 on the NFL streaming out there as well.
I do the drive with Matt Williamson, who was a former NFL scout and used to work at ESPN. Right. Matt and I do the show. We've done it now for, I believe, 6 or 7 years now that we've done that, and it's really taken off. And appreciate everybody listening. And you can check that out. Go ahead and download the wherever you can download those things. I don't even know how this stuff works. They just tell me to do it, and I talk and do that. And
that's how we got you on this show today. Definitely check it out on Steelers.com and the Steelers Nation Radio podcast with Dell and Matt Williamson. Matt does a great job too. Always very insightful when you hear him talk about the Black and Gold. But Dell, the way we got you on the show, and I want to end the show this week talking a little bit about your involvement with Washington County, the Frontier League, Pony League. For those out there that do not know, I have 2 sons. I coach them both in baseball, football, and basketball. But it all started with me in Cannon Mac youth baseball when my oldest son, who's now in Pony League, this is his first year of Pony, started playing T-ball at age 4. And I've coached him up since he was 4 years old. Now he's in his final 2 years of youth baseball, playing his last 2 years of Pony baseball. So you and I met just a few weeks ago on the Pony League circuit. Why don't you talk a little bit about Washington County, the Pony League, the Frontier League? Of course, the biggest thing that we know about is the Pony League World Series, headquartered right here in Western Pennsylvania and Washington County.
Yeah, I've been the Pony president here for Washington Youth Baseball for the last 10 years, and about 9. It was my second year as the president. We kind of did a little merger with Cannon Mac Youth Baseball. We were both down at that point to, basically you're just kind of, everybody's struggling to keep their numbers up in youth baseball because of travel baseball and kids playing other sports and things of that nature. And so, I coached managed the son or the nephews of the former Cannon Mac president. We were talking and we got talking about it. I said, why don't we just form our own league here? That gave us 10 teams. We then added them into the Pony World Series part of this whole thing because Washington's always gotten, because we're the host team for the Pony World Series. We've always gotten that automatic bid into the Pony World Series, so we can make a much more competitive team. And this was 9 years ago. It's continued to grow. We now have every area in Washington County, with the exception of Peters Township, are now involved in the Founders League, and over 250 players. We got 21 teams this year that are part of the Founders League here in Washington County. Last year's team made the final, right. Lost to Japan in the final. It was a 2-1 game in the 7th inning. They only play 7 innings in pony baseball. So, it just kind of got away from them at the end. But it's a great thing. It generates a lot of interest. You can watch that thing online. They show the games here locally on what used to be Root. I don't even know what it is anymore now. AT&T Sportsnet, whatever they call that. But you can see that it happens for me, unfortunately, during training camp every year. So I'm watching the games at my favorite drinking establishment at night after Steelers practices. I'm watching that on my phone or on the TV. So it's a lot of fun, but generated a ton. I think it was $4.8 million last year in tourism and money for Washington County. The county tourism department has stepped in and as part of this in recent years and has really put some money into it as well. It's a top-notch event. We get to play our games. It's one of the great things about being in Washington Youth Baseball. We get to play our regular season games on that same field. And so, I think it's the best youth baseball field in Western Pennsylvania, if not all of Pennsylvania. And it's a great thing. I've been very pleased with how it's worked out. I'm very proud of what we put together, and it all started, 9 years ago with just those meetings with Cannon Mac baseball, and it's really gotten rolling from there. And it's a big deal, and a lot of kids love to do it, and it's great for the area.
I know being part of the Can and Mac community, again, coaching all the different youth sports over the years, it's a big deal around here. And they've had a lot of really good baseball players come out of this area. And
That guys make it onto ESPN, and it's for the top plays of the game and stuff. So it's a big
yeah,
deal.
it is a big deal. And for those out there, that if you get a chance to go down to Lou Hayes Field, right?
Lou Hayes Pony Field. Yep.
It is, as Dale said, a phenomenal venue here in Western Pennsylvania. They do a great job with the World Series this year. You get to see teams from all over the world come in here into our little neck of the woods and compete at a high level of baseball, really good baseball with the Pony League World Series. So make sure you check that out. And excited, Dale, to go through that season in the Frontier League. My first time at it, so I'm undefeated so far, just like the Pirates. I'm 0-0 in Pony League baseball, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it'll be fun this year. I'm really looking forward to it with the additions of some of those other teams. Now, like I said, 21 teams in the league. It's a headache for me as the guy who runs it, but I'm willing to deal with it just because I understand how important it is for these kids.
You've done a great job so far and over the years. Thank you for all your hard work involving in that youth program with Pony League Baseball. Dell, looking forward to the upcoming Steelers season, the draft. I'd love to have you on again down the road, maybe around mini camp, training camp time. And thanks for coming on the show today.
Anytime, Ed.
All right, that's going to do it for our broadcast for this week. Make sure you check us out at the Three Rivers Podcast right here on Facebook, on our One Berg social media channels throughout, including our YouTube channel. Have a great day, everybody.